We just started this meeting.
Yeah. All right. So, good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to everyone who has joined this session today. So, growth is something every organization strives for, but too often it comes at the cost of constant firefighting, reactive decision making, and operational chaos. What if growth could be intentional, scalable, and sustainable instead? To help us explore that, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Amit Wadhwani, as the leader of strategic operations focused on driving business success at Ignatius. Welcome, Amit.
Thank you, Arba.
Yeah, so Amit is at forefront of driving operational excellence. He has played a key role in helping teams scale through agile practices, AI-driven innovations, and process optimization. Today, he'll be sharing his insights on growth shouldn't feel like constant firefighting, a session that promises practical strategies and a fresh perspective on building organizations that can grow without the chaos. Please join me in welcoming Amit Wadhwani. Over to you, Amit.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Arba. Welcome everyone to Ignatiuz Knowledge Series. So the topic for today's webinar is from firefighting to systems thinking. Today I'm going to talk about how companies evolve from a reactive execution approach by following systems thinking, which helps them save from firefighting and build a foundation for scalable growth. Now, the first question that comes to my mind is why do we need systems thinking? So why do we need systems thinking? So when a company grows, we see that there are a lot of things which get exposed, which were not visible earlier because a lot of founders, leaders, or the people, the senior people would step up to hide those things. So for example, we notice that there's an increase in the number of escalations by the client. The leaders are constantly involved in asking for status updates, trying to know where the project stands because they have so much to do, the critical decisions which are dependent on the leaders, which actually happens in the beginning, that they are involved in every decision making process, those decisions get delayed. There are few people who are the key heroes for conducting the operations, and if they are not around, the operations actually come to a pause, and this all results into customer having inconsistent experience. They do not really feel that the experience that they're getting across multiple ventures that they have with the company are consistent. This actually creates a lot of organizational friction. The people start feeling stressed out. Uh, because of the lack of systems and processes, we see that there's more of unplanned rework happening over and over, which again impacts the margins because there's more work that you're doing at the same cost. This also results into missed commitments to the stakeholders. We are not able to deliver what we committed on. And because of very high dependency on the founder, which is not really system driven, this causes some scaling limits. We are not able to grow beyond a certain point. Now, firefighting, when we are in the early stages of the business, when we are in the firefighting mode, we see that we are making progress. But that progress is not really by solving patterns. That is just by solving the immediate problems. So, how does it typically work? It all starts with a crisis. Whenever a problem is identified or a major a symptom appears, what we usually do is, and in the early stages, we just find a senior leader who can intervene immediately and solve the problem. So we get into the heroics mode. Now, this senior person who brings a lot of experience starts looking into the problem, but with the mindset of fixing it only for one time. So they start looking at the patch method of solving the problem. It, of course, fixes the symptoms initially. The customer is happy. We know that everything is good, but eventually it does not solve the root cause. The root cause remains and the problem reappears. The issue actually returns back. So this cycle keeps moving over and over. Okay. It's very, very important to break the cycle and change our mindset from incident management to structural design thinking. Implementing system thinking is not very difficult. It just starts by changing one question that we as a leader ask. So in the reactive approach, where we are not talking about systems and processes, the question that we ask against every problem is that who made this mistake? So we are actually trying to find an individual to blame or a situation to blame, which actually covers the or masks the underlying problem or the real reason that is causing this problem, which happens because of the weakness in the workflow, which happens because of lack of the systems or processes in place. So the mindset is, how do we fix this problem today? Changing it is easy. We, as a leader, we need to change our approach. When we talk about a systematic approach, the question changes to what made this mistake possible, where we are trying to investigate what was the real reason for this problem to happen. We analyze the sequence of steps that happen. What are the checkpoints? Where are the gaps in the visibility? How is the system misconfigured to make this problem happen? And the mindset shifts from how do we fix it today to how do we avoid this problem from becoming a pattern and happening again. Many times it happens that the companies confuse the process with a system. They feel that, okay, if we have a process documented, we have a system in place. Process is just a set of steps and activities in a workflow, whereas the system ensures that the process is adhered to, the process is followed. So process involves, oh, I'm sorry, the system involves process, ownership, evidence, review, improvement. If I break it down, there are four major components of a system. The first is process, which is the collection of defined steps that are needed to complete a task or a workflow. Then ownership, of course, there has to be someone who's accountable for running the process. So for example, if it's an onboarding process, the HR person is responsible or accountable for that. It's very important that there's only one person accountable for the process. If there are more than one people accountable, then there's no one accountable. The major problem that happens with the businesses is they have processes, they try to assign ownership, but then even then the process is not followed. The reason is because of lack of guardrails, because of lack of governance in place. It's important that while you are designing a system, you start thinking about how would we audit the adherence to the process, how would we review the performance matrix. And at the last, we need to build a culture around following the process. So for example, with IT companies, capturing work hours is very, very important. Timesheets are very important. But we have a process saying that, okay, you have to fill in your timesheets every Friday. We have a system to record the hours, but is the team really doing that or not? So we need to build a culture where the team is trained to follow the habit. They need to understand why that process is very important. And of course, the culture to bring up the issue so that they tell us that, okay, this is how we can make the process better. Because if the people who are working at the forefront get involved in making the process better, then of course it follows more adherence and it is more strong compared to what it would have been with the limited set of people. When it comes to solving problem, most of the leaders usually think about short-term fixes, which solve the capacity, does not really bring clarity in terms of how that problem can be addressed in the future. So what we usually do is, if we have a problem, we'll say that, okay, let's hire a senior leader. Now, what we are doing is we are expecting that somebody from outside working with some giant would come in, they would come in with some experience and fix the problem. But what happens is they actually uh, start following our old ways of working. So our old, confused, bad ways of working without process or system is moved into a new hand, which is more expensive. So we are paying to follow the same ways of working to a new person. We start introducing a new tool. We hope that, okay, if a new tool is introduced, then probably it would just fix everything. We do not think through that if that tool is ready for us to be used. I have seen companies saying that, okay, we want to use SAP, but the question is, do we really need SAP? If you start using these tools without due diligence, then these would end up becoming a pile of the tools that we do not use, and it causes more of administrative workload. And of course, everybody's favorite, adding more meetings. We think that if we meet with the people more often, if we do more status check-ins, it would create some system and solve the problem. But actually, it creates a circular discussion. It doesn't create systematic accountability. You just get into a loop of continuous discussion instead of solving the real problem. All these gaps which are at the system level, which are caused by the lack of processes and systems, are usually manifested as people or quality problems. If something goes wrong, the first thing that we as a leader do is say that, okay, this is because of XYZ person. But the real reason is the lack of systems and processes. How do we know is if we have recurring issues, the same mistakes keep happening every day, every week, every month, every quarter, then we know that that's a system problem. That's not a person problem. There are decision bottlenecks where operational decisions stall if one person goes out. So we do not have to be people dependent. We have to be system dependent. Even if somebody goes out, we know that the system keeps running. The work quality output is varied. Customer do not get the same experience every time. So it depends on the individual who is working on that, because now every individual have their own style of working. If everybody is not unified, everybody is not working in the same pattern, following the same system, then of course the output and the experience would vary. And the managers would end up spending their energy chasing the progress updates. They would just want to make sure that the work gets delivered rather than checking the quality of the work that is being delivered. Of course, inconsistent delivery. Customers would report that the delivery is not same what it used to happen earlier. Now, very basic example is if we have a system for sending out weekly summary reports, one person is trained to send the weekly summary reports, other person is just sending an email, third person is just sending some message on Teams or other platform. So that's how the delivery experience varies. But if we have a system in place which captures that, okay, the weekly status reports are being sent out every week, then it creates a trail. Then everybody knows that, okay, this is what we have to do, and they follow that. And of course, it creates a lot of blind spot risk. We are not able to identify the risk till the time those actually convert into failures. The operational path from moving to incident and problem solving to actually creating a system is very simple. The first step is to identify the problem. We have to isolate the recurring structural pain point. If something is happening over and over, then trace that, find out which problem is reoccurring. Okay. Then study the pattern. Try to find out what events are causing that. You might use 5 why methodology to understand what caused that particular problem till the time you reach to the core of the problem. Okay. That's how you identify the root cause. Instead of just identifying the symptom, we know what is the root cause of the problem. Probably no visibility into what's going on, no documented process. Then we build a system around that. We create automated rules, we create checkpoints, we assign ownership and accountability. And then, of course, continuously review and improve to make sure that the process is being followed, and then it's improved based on the needs. Arva, let me take a pause to see if anybody has any questions in the chat box that I can answer.
Sure.
But in the meantime, if you can just gather questions, I'll continue moving forward.
Sure.
Now, there are a few examples which we recently experienced on how did we introduce system thinking. So first was project delivery. What was happening is we had too much reliance on manual checking. So delivery timelines were slipping continuously because dependencies relied on individual memories and ad hoc emails. It was not documented. Somebody would say that, okay, the customer sent me an email, I'm working on that grounds. When we went deeper into this, we identified that the project status, scripts, changes, these are completely invisible. When the deadlines pass, when we try to investigate what went wrong, that's when we uncover this. And this exactly resembles to what I was talking earlier about the blind spot risk. So this was a blind spot. We never saw this coming, that, okay, there were weekly summary reports, for example, not being sent out for last 4 weeks. That only happened when the customer went upset and they started pointing out that, okay, you're not following the right process. You committed that you're going to send weekly reports, but you're not doing that. What we did is we designed a strong delivery engine which has weekly client status rhythms. We have a shared RAID log. All the risk, issues, decisions, everything is logged in the RAID log. And we have set accountabilities for all of these. So the project manager is, for example, responsible for maintaining the raid log. The project coordinator is responsible for sending the weekly summary reports. And for every metric, we have a single person ownership. So one person is accountable so that there's no confusion or ambiguity in who was supposed to do what work. We have standardized sprint readiness checkpoints, some checkpoints which say that, okay, is the sprint really ready to work on or not? QA has their own checklist to evaluate if the user story is ready for them to start testing or not. As a result, we have fewer surprises, predictable commitments, and early interventions in any risk that could have happened. The next problem that we were facing was with the role clarity. Everybody was busy, everybody was spending endless hours in the work, but there was lack of accountability. They were working, but there was no cross-departmental talks. They were not really communicating with each other. And then because of this, there were some mistakes happening because of these gaps. What we identified is that the job description was there, but it did not really reveal what are the boundaries and how do we do cross-functional handovers. So what we did is we created accountability matrices where we have complete transition uh, on how do we work across from one function to other. So we have mapped decision rights. Everybody knows what they are supposed to do and what are their decision boundaries. We capture evidence of every task completion. So whenever we have a process designed with each step, we know that, okay, this is what means that the process is completed. Everybody knows how they can escalate for any roadblocks or any early risk that they have identified. And there's shared RACI, which is mapped across all the workflows. So for every step, we know that which people are to be informed, which people are accountable, and whom should be consulted before a decision is made. As a result, during last few years, we identified that we have less confusion in the communication. Everybody is more autonomous. They are taking more accountability and charge of their work. And then, of course, it ends into faster delegation because we know that, okay, this person is going to take charge of that. So let's just delegate rather than trying to explain this to that person over and over. One very important aspect in building a very strong systems around process is how do we surface the issues. What happens is, as a leaders, we create a lot of strategies and hope that those strategies would be followed and executed. But at the ground level, reality is totally different. At the ground level, there are a lot of issues which stop the people from implementing those strategies. Now, let me take an example. If at a war front, there's a strategy room where the strategy is made on how would we handle the war, and at the forefront, there are these soldiers who are actually executing the war. If the soldiers are not communicating back to the strategy room of the challenges that they are facing, the strategy would never improvise based on that. So we wanted to create this layer where people can bring up their issues and they can report the ground level realities really. What we identified that there are three levels of maturity. First is reactive. Everybody hides issues. Nobody wants to really speak about the issues. They are hidden to blame the culture, and they only emerge when some disaster happens. Okay, so if something goes wrong, they would come back and say, "Oh, there was this issue, and we were not able to solve this problem because of that." Okay, in level two, which is more passive, where we ask people, where we force people to talk about the issues, that's when they start talking about it. So they discuss the issues under pressure. If they are not asked, they would not do that. But if we bring them to a room, if we tell them that, okay, please tell us, then probably they would do it. But it requires a lot of active efforts and digging. And at the mature level where we feel we are going there right now is that issues are surfaced naturally. Everybody speaks about the problems that they are facing. There are defined rhythms where we capture what is roadblock, who owns the next action, and when was it resolved. So clear traceability and surfacing of the issues is very, very important if you have to design a strong system. Because strong system cannot be designed till the time we know what are the root level problems. Implementing any new system is probably not very difficult. It just requires the right approach. So this is what I would usually propose, that in the first 30 days, you have to find out which system is really important. How do we do that is identify the three main recurring bottlenecks that are happening. You will have a full list. What you can do is ask your leadership team to bring a list of all the issues that they are experiencing, and out of those, with the consensus, come back with top three recurring bottlenecks which are causing impact on the delivery. Based on those three items, map down the current visual workflows. How is it happening right now? Before you start designing a new system, it's very, very important to understand how we are doing it now. And that's how we do process maturity assessment. We have a dedicated process analysis team which actually works with our customers, and that team also works in-house to just map out how the process is currently working. What we identified is that sometimes we feel that the process is working very well, but we've identified that the process has several deviations. It was supposed to go from point A to B to C to D, but we identified that in many instances it went from A to C, C to B, B to D, sometimes A to D, sometimes D to A. It was not following the right pattern. And that can only be uncovered when you map out the existing process visually. Now, with every process, assign a single person who is accountable to own the improvement to the process. Because if everybody is owning that, then nobody would take accountability for that. In the next 30 days, build very light visual workflows on how that dream process should look like. With every step of the process, you should clearly define evidence of completion of every step. For example, when I was saying that, is the user story ready to start working or not? So QA cannot make a decision ad hoc. They have a list of evidences that they know that, okay, this is what it means that the user story is ready for me to start. Does it contain the acceptance criteria? Does it contain the sequence diagram or not? Does it tell me what API should be called? Does it tell me what data tables should be updated? There are a lot of parameters that we have identified. Once we have this process diagram in place in terms of what we want to accomplish, we should set up a weekly cadence to review the progress. In the next 30 days, embed this process across the organization, go gradually, start from the top leadership, identify how the team is adapting to this new process, iterate and update as you feel based on the feedback, and then expand it to more functions and go deeper into the levels. Now, there are a few things which we need to be very, very careful of when we are designing the process or when we are identifying the top three areas that we need to address or top three bottlenecks. First is, so consider these to be the questions that you should ask to yourself to identify those three things. Probably just pass these on to your leadership team and tell them that ask yourself these questions and come back with the bottlenecks that you think should be the highest priority. Okay. So first is dependency. Where is our output heavily dependent? Is it dependent on an individual's memory? Sometimes the leader has to get constantly involved. For example, you might say that if the founder is not involved, then the delivery does not happen. If the founder comes in, then everybody gets working. So that's where the dependency comes in. Repeatability, which errors are happening over and over, which failures occurred more than twice this quarter, twice this week. You just have to define your right cadence. Okay? What assumptions team members are making to make critical decisions? Are they making assumptions just based on the subjective knowledge, or is it based on the data? So if they're making any assumptions based on the subjective knowledge, then the assumptions would vary, and that causes the variance in the delivery. Are there any activities or any areas which are assigned to a team rather than individual? As I was saying earlier, if there are two people accountable, then there's no one accountable. So if we say that, okay, the cloud team is responsible for ensuring the security of the cloud. So you do not know who is responsible. The team could say, oh, I did not know that person was responsible. Consistency, are our customers having that consistent experience? And the last one is redundancy. What is the key element of our operational delivery that would break if somebody steps out? Okay, if a project delivery manager, project manager, if anybody goes out, then what is expected to break first? So ask yourself these questions, convert that into a question bank, sit down with your leadership, ask them these questions, and then put all the answers in one place and then prioritize. One area where companies fail is they design processes, they think that they have implemented system, but they do not really measure the impact or effectiveness of those systems. So it's very important that there are some validation metrics in place. A design system is functional when the behavior shifts naturally across the organization. Okay, how do we know that is? There's reduced number of incidents of the problems that had happened earlier. Team is able to make their decisions on their own. They are more autonomous. They are faster. They are not waiting for somebody else to make a decision. Any risk that could happen is reported earlier. You would see that the number of risks being reported before those actually convert into a disaster have increased. And then the founder or senior leadership dependency has reduced. Of course, you can come back with your own validation matrix based on the kind of system that you are thinking about, and then you can also make it more measurable. In all of this, it's very important that the leaders, the founders, change their mindset from being a problem solver, which probably they like doing, they are good at doing that. Founders are very good problem solvers. Okay, you give them a problem, they would just get 100% involved and get the problem solved. Okay, they act as a main hub to do everything, all the inquiries, talking to the customer, sales, pre-sales, but it limits our scalability bandwidth to that person. If one person is trying to do everything, then that person can do only limited amount of work. Okay? The leaders need to change their mindset to a systematic thinking. They need to become a system designer. They need to work with the leadership team to design, audit, and fine tune the structural framework that operate with 100% prediction even when nobody is around. When I say no one, that means the leadership is not around. This is the core recipe of having the organization work independently with full scalability. When it comes to design scaling, designing healthy and repeatable systems, I would consider this slide to be a look back of what we discussed. Pain is just a signal. Every time you hear somebody in pain, every time somebody comes back with a complaint, consider that to be an opportunity to design a system. Okay, this shows exactly where some changes are needed. So I was talking to one of my friends yesterday evening, and he said that he was involved in this performance review process. He was filling his own review form, and then it took him like 2-3 hours to fill in the form. So that's when he started feeling that, okay, no, this is not right, and then he revisited this entire appraisal process. Understand incident versus pattern firefighting only fixes the immediate symptoms. Okay, system thinking focuses on correcting the underlying problem or the structural loop that creates the problem over and over. There's a clear difference between process and system. Just simply writing a process document or defining the step does not ensure that the process would be executed. The system integrates the active ownership, the process, feedback review, improvements, matrix, everything together to be effective. And of course, built with intention, high performing, healthy businesses. These are actually designed deliberately based on these systems. They are they never grow accidentally. You have to put in efforts and build these systems to grow. Okay. One very important consider this to be a concluding note that every problem that you face is actually an opportunity to improve. Okay, it's an opportunity to improve the system. All you need to do is move from reactive problem solving to structural design, which solves the problems or the root cause and then stops it from happening over and over. So that's pretty much it. I know it was very precise. If you have any questions, you can just let me know now.
Sure, Amit. Hi, thank you so much. It was an amazing session. We do have certain questions here. The first question is when you're working with a team and trying to identify a systematic pattern, how do you distinguish between a people problem and a system problem?
So, Arva, I think the people problem are usually behavioral. Okay, system problems are where there's no clarity. Okay, now let me take an example. Timesheet. It's a very classic example. Most of the companies have a very strong process of capturing timesheets. Okay, now there could be two possibilities. First is there's no clear instruction on which project you need to put the hours in. When do you have to put the hours? If the person does not know, if the person is not trained, then that's a system problem. Okay, but if the person is trained, if the onboarding is right, if the person has been told, if there has been some training, some learning management system where the person was told that, okay, you have to fill in the timesheets every Friday, this is the project that you would be working on for next 3 months and you have to do it, let's say 5 p.m. Friday. Okay, if the person is not doing it, coming back on Monday saying that, oh, I forgot to do that, then that's a people problem. Okay, both are fixable to some extent. System problems are easier to fix because that is where leadership can have more control. People problem can be fixed with more of training.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much. I think we have one more question, which is
Mhm.
what are the early warning signs that ownership in a team is starting to break down?
So I think you will see that coming as a leader. You always see that coming. So for example, if somebody who was performing very good and you see that okay, now that person is not very proactive, you have to go and follow up with them, then there's something wrong. Okay, so team breakdown, I don't know if that is the right term to use, but these indicators should be taken very seriously. And that's where we have this founder connect in place where the founders meet with the team members. We have these quarterly town halls where people are encouraged to come forward and speak about what problem they are facing. But at the same time, the founders also or the leaders also need to work with the team and understand what are the changes in the pattern of their working. That's when you start seeing early indicators of where there's some kind of breakdown and you need to intervene and fix it.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, I think we are already ahead of time. So, thank you so much for an insightful and thought-provoking session. We hope everyone who attended this session today found this insightful and walked away with some practical ideas on how to make growth more intentional and less reactive. So, thank you so much, all the attendees who have joined today. We truly appreciate your time and participation. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.